planning on visiting the Vatican when you come to Rome, I know the questions you have. Whether you should visit the Vatican Museums or St. Peter's Basilica first, what time is the best time of day to go, where to get tickets, how to skip the line, how can you fit in climbing St. Peter's Dome, and much more. You know, when I came to Rome as an adult, before I moved here, I was traveling with a friend and we didn't make any plan to go visit the Vatican. We just thought, let's go down there. So we did. And we missed the Vatican Museums. We didn't see the Sistine Chapel. We didn't know what the opening hours were. And so we wasted a day going down there, trying to figure it out, and pretty much being lost. I've lived here since 2001, and Alessandro and I ran a bed and breakfast until 2018. And in those 17 years, we helped thousands of our guests figure out the best way to spend their time in Rome, and much of that was figuring out how to visit the Vatican. And whether it was those years running the bed and breakfast, or since I started publishing my website, RomeWise, I've visited the Vatican on numerous occasions. I like to say for research, but the reality is that I love visiting the Vatican, and I go as often as I can. And I really do visit the Vatican Museums often as research because I want to make good videos for you guys, and I want to make sure that the content on the RomeWise website is up to date. So I think that I'm in an excellent position to share with you the best tips and tricks for planning your visit to Vatican City. So without further ado, let's dive in. There are three main things to see when you visit the Vatican: St. Peter's Basilica, St. Peter's Square, and the Vatican Museums, which is where the Sistine Chapel is. You could see one, two, or all three of these sites, even in a single day. If your visit to the Vatican will include more than just seeing St. Peter's Square, then I suggest you don't plan to visit any other major sites like the Colosseum on the same day. If you really want to visit the Vatican and the Colosseum on the same day, I have a page about this on the RomeWise website. First, here are some really quick tips about visiting Vatican City. You do not need a passport to visit Vatican City. Vatican City is a separate state from Italy, with just over 500 residents. To visit holy sites inside of Vatican City, which includes St. Peter's Basilica and the Sistine Chapel, you must be appropriately dressed, and this means no bare knees and no bare shoulders. It's perfectly fine to wear sandals and jeans. It's not about being dressed up, it's about being dressed modestly. I get asked quite often if it's okay to wear knee-length shorts or skirts. This is not up to me. This is up to the Vatican guards. And so you can decide if you want to risk it, but if it were me, I would not risk it. I would wear long linen pants or a long linen or cotton skirt, or perhaps those hiking trousers where you can unzip the bottoms. And this is why on all of my pages about what to pack when you visit Rome, I suggest bringing a scarf with you, including in summer, specifically for this reason, so you can cover up your shoulders if you want to visit a church. And in a pinch, you can be sure that near the Vatican, you will find plenty of places to buy scarves or t-shirts or something that'll help you cover up if you need to. We'll get the easiest one out of the way first, so let's start with St. Peter's Square, also known as Piazza San Pietro. It would be easy to take St. Peter's Square for granted. If you're beelining to get into St. Peter's Basilica, you might be focused on the security queues and wondering how long you'll have to wait in line. But St. Peter's Square is also worth visiting in its own right. First of all, it's the only part of Vatican City you can visit without any tickets or queuing. If you have very limited time in Rome, you might decide that this is about all you really want to see in Vatican City, because everything else involves tickets, lines, or both, and an involved visit on the inside. If you want to know a lot more about St. Peter's Square and what you can see there and the history behind it, you can check out my page on the RomeWise website. One last thing about St. Peter's Square: if you visit the Vatican Museums and you exit them the same place where you entered them, then you will not see St. Peter's Square unless you make a specific effort to do so, because St. Peter's Square is on the complete opposite side of Vatican City from where the Vatican Museums are. The second thing to visit in Vatican City is St. Peter's Basilica. St. Peter's Basilica is a Renaissance-era church, and by many standards, the world's largest. It gets its name from the Apostle Peter, whose tomb is directly beneath the dome of the church. Michelangelo is the artist most responsible for the shape of the basilica as we know it today, although of course many artists and architects also had a hand in its design. In fact, the facade was added later, and in the 17th century, Gian Lorenzo Bernini designed St. Peter's Square as you see it today. St. Peter's is a basilica, but not a cathedral, as it does not have its own bishop. The Pope is the Bishop of Rome, but his church is actually St. John in Lateran, San Giovanni in Laterano. However, the Pope is head of Vatican City, and that's where he resides. So I think the importance of St. Peter's Basilica is not that it's the Pope's church, but rather that it's the church that sits over St. Peter's tomb, and also the church that Michelangelo designed, and it is just full of so much beauty. A basic visit to St. Peter's Basilica usually entails walking around the central naves, the side naves, and then poking into some of the side chapels. My favorite thing to see in St. Peter's Basilica is always Michelangelo's Pietà. It's the first thing you see on the right-hand side as you enter the church. Another obvious thing to note is Bernini's baldacchino or canopy. There's actually so much to see in St. Peter's Basilica that I can't really cover it in this video because I want to focus on planning your visit to the Vatican. To learn more about all the things there are to see inside of St. Peter's Basilica, you can visit my dedicated page on the RomeWise website. You could pick up an audio guide on your way into the Basilica, or you can book a guided tour. It's free to enter St. Peter's Basilica. The lines you see in St. Peter's Square are people waiting to go through security, which is sort of airport style. While it's free to visit St. Peter's Basilica, there are 3 places you have to pay to get into if you want to visit them. The Museum of the Treasury is inside St. Peter's Basilica on the left-hand side as you face the altar. There's a small fee to enter, but I think it's an interesting visit and worth doing. The next site inside of St. Peter's Basilica that you can pay to visit is the Dome. In fact, the only way to climb the Dome is by entering St. Peter's Basilica first. At any point during your visit inside St. Peter's Basilica, you can head over to the ticket office and purchase tickets to climb the dome. The tickets cost €8 if you want to do the first section on foot. They cost €10 if you want to take the elevator. But there's usually a much longer line for the elevator because it only holds about 10 people at a time. Speaking of lines, there is no way to skip the line to purchase your tickets for the dome, and there's no way to skip the line for the elevator if there is one. The second half of the dome climb is entirely on foot, but it is worthwhile to get those amazing views of St. Peter's Square below. The third site you need tickets to visit in St. Peter's Basilica, or rather under it, is St. Peter's Tomb. St. Peter's Tomb, also referred to as the Scavi, which means excavations, or the Vatican Necropolis, is a special place to visit, and you should book this as far in advance as you can. One last thing you may wish to visit inside of St. Peter's Basilica are the Vatican Grottos. The Vatican Grottos are easy to visit inside St. Peter's Basilica. They're right behind Bernini's baldacchino. The Vatican Grottos are where many popes are buried, and they're free to visit. Once in the Vatican Grottos, you can head back up into St. Peter's Basilica, but you can also exit from there. Another reason it's easy to visit the Vatican Grottos is because, also unlike St. Peter's Tomb, the Vatican Grottos is a huge space and not claustrophobic at all. Finally, while it's not really a thing to visit, another thing you should look for when you visit St. Peter's Basilica is the Swiss Guard. The Swiss Guard wear different outfits depending on their duties, but they all wear costumes that were originally designed in the early 1500s, although not by Michelangelo. That's an urban myth. The Swiss Guard have a specific duty to guard the Pope's life and St. Peter's Basilica. The Swiss Guard is the world's smallest army, and they are very well trained. You will not see the Swiss Guard at the Vatican Museums because the Vatican Museums is a private entity and unrelated to St. Peter's Basilica, even though they're both in Vatican City. At the Vatican Museums, you'll see Vatican Museums guards in modern attire. So now that you know all about St. Peter's Basilica and all of the different things you can see, including some of the optional sites you can visit, you might be wondering how best to plan your visit there. What's the best time of day to go? How long will your visit take? How can you skip the line? And should you see this before or after your visit to the Vatican Museums? St. Peter's Basilica is open daily from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. The Museum of the Treasury and the Dome are also open daily. The exception to this is on Wednesdays when the Pope is giving the papal audience or during a papal mass. St. Peter's Tomb has more limited opening hours. I'm linking to the official website in the description so you can check there for more details. For me, the best time to visit St. Peter's Basilica is similar to what I would recommend for visiting most monuments in Rome, meaning first thing in the morning or close to closing. The 2 reasons for this are the light and the crowds. I love going into St. Peter's Basilica first thing in the morning. The light is absolutely beautiful. And the same goes for the end of the day when the light is streaming through those beautiful stained glass windows. I can't guarantee that you're going to find short lines first thing in the morning or at the end of the day, because lately Rome has just gotten really crowded, and you can show up at 6:30 in the morning and probably find very few people in line, but there's just no guarantee anymore. And because St. Peter's Basilica closes at the same time year-round, if you climb the dome late in the day in winter, you'll be treated to some beautiful views of St. Peter's Square below, especially at Christmas time. If you book a visit to St. Peter's tomb, you'll have no choice as to what time you can visit because they basically give you the time available. Once you end your visit to St. Peter's tomb, you wind up inside St. Peter's Basilica. A visit to St. Peter's tomb lasts a little over an hour and a half. Climbing the dome takes at least an hour, and visiting St. Peter's Basilica itself also takes at least an hour. So if you just plan on visiting St. Peter's Basilica and maybe the grottos, give yourself about an hour to an hour and a half, not including the time you spend in the security line. If you plan on also visiting the dome, add an hour onto that. For those of you who decide to visit St. Peter's tomb, your visit will end inside of St. Peter's Basilica, and so logically, you'll visit the Basilica after you visit the tomb. And I know that many of you want to include a visit to St. Peter's Dome once you're inside the Basilica. So if you do all three of these visits, the tomb, followed by the Basilica, followed by the dome, give yourself about 4 hours. I know 4 hours might sound like a lot, especially when you consider that when you visit St. Peter's tomb, you don't have to stand in any long security lines to get in. You do have to go through a security check, but not those long lines you see in St. Peter's Square. But my timing estimates were not including time spent in those security lines anyway. The reason I'm saying to give yourself so much time is simply because the Vatican is huge and you really need to account for logistics. Just consider the time it takes to get from point A to point B, let's say the security line into the inside of the Basilica, perhaps using the restroom on the way in, picking up an audio guide, going from, let's say, the Pietà over to Bernini's Baldacchino, that's a few minutes. Everything just takes a lot of time. And so I'm trying to set your expectations so you know to give yourself plenty of time so that you're not stressed. In just a few moments, I'm going to be sharing with you how to plan your visit to the Vatican Museums. And after that, we're going to talk about whether you should visit St. Peter's Basilica on the same day as you visit the Vatican Museums, and if so, which to visit first. So keep watching. So what about skipping the lines at St. Peter's Basilica? Well, for visiting St. Peter's tomb, your group will be so small, there is no line to skip. As I explained, for the dome, there is no way to skip the line to purchase tickets, and there's no way to skip the line for the elevator if you choose that option. As for the Basilica itself, I have a whole video about this. Suffice to say that the easiest way to skip the line to St. Peter's Basilica is by taking a tour of the Vatican Museums and taking the shortcut from the Sistine Chapel. I'm going to cover that a little bit more when I talk about the Vatican Museums. The next best way to skip the line to St. Peter's Basilica is what I already told you, taking a tour of St. Peter's tomb, where your tour ends inside the Basilica itself. Finally, you can try to come when the lines are small, but these days there's just no guarantee of when that will be. Yes, you can come in low season. Yes, you can come first thing in the morning, and you should find shorter lines. But as I said, there's just no guarantee anymore. As to which you should visit first, St. Peter's Basilica or the Vatican Museums, I'm going to cover that after I talk about the Vatican Museums. All right, the third main site to see in Vatican City is the Vatican Museums, which is where the Sistine Chapel is. This is definitely the part of Vatican City that will take the most of your time and energy. I'm going to share with you how to visit the Vatican Museums, what you can expect, how to skip the line, how to get tickets. But stick around because after that, I'm also going to share with you how to see the Pope when you visit Vatican City. The Vatican Museums contains the world's largest private art collection. And just imagine how much art they own that's not even on display. They're called the Vatican Museums and not singular museum because the collection was begun in 1506 under Pope Julius II, but then has been added to many times by different popes over the centuries. These museums contain some of the most priceless pieces of art in the world, including sculptures, paintings, mosaics, tapestries, and more. Today, the Vatican Museums occupy many different buildings that are all connected to each other. And that's why there's so much to see and why visiting the Vatican Museums can take up so much of your time and energy. The Vatican Museums are made up of 7.5 kilometers or 4.5 miles of wall-to-wall art. And that includes not just the art you'll see in these rooms, but the art you'll find in the floors, walls, and ceilings themselves. But don't panic, because most visits to the Vatican Museums only cover a fraction of those museums. And of course, the reality is that most people only visit the Vatican Museums because they want to see what's at the end of them, which is the Sistine Chapel. Of course, there are two ways you can visit the Vatican Museums. One is to go on your own, and the other is to take a tour. So in just a moment, I'm going to explain how you can get your tickets to the Vatican Museums. But first, I want to go over the differences between going on your own and going with a tour. One difference is how much time you'll spend in the museums if you go on your own versus going on a tour. Most standard tours of the Vatican Museums take around 2 hours, whereas if you go on your own, you can take as little or as much time as you want. If all you really want to see is the Sistine Chapel, you can beeline from the entrance to the Sistine Chapel in probably less than 20 minutes. I have a video where I show you how to do this, so you can check that out if you want to see the exact route to follow. On the other hand, I know some of you want to spend more time in the museums than a typical tour allows for. Once you're inside the Vatican Museums, you can stay there as long as you like until closing. And by the way, this applies to tours as well. If you take a tour that ends inside the Vatican Museums, usually it will be inside of the Sistine Chapel or back at the entrance, which is also the exit, you can simply stay inside the museums and continue your visit. I get asked a lot if it's possible to leave the Sistine Chapel through the same door you came in from and go back through the museums the same way you got there. And the answer is no, this is not possible. The only way to leave the Sistine Chapel is through one of the exits at the back, or rather, the opposite end of the chapel from where you entered. If you take the exit of the Sistine Chapel on the left-hand side, whether on your own or with a tour, you will wind up back at the entrance of the Vatican Museums, which is also the exit. If you take the exit of the Sistine Chapel on the right-hand side, it'll take you to the shortcut that leads to the entrance of St. Peter's Basilica. If you don't take that shortcut to St. Peter's Basilica, but you do want to visit St. Peter's Basilica after the Vatican Museums, you'll have to leave the museums, as I mentioned, by going all the way back to the entrance and then walk all the way around the walls into St. Peter's Square and go through the security lines to get into the Basilica from there. And so, of course, you may be thinking, well, obviously, I'm just going to take that shortcut into the Basilica and save myself all that aggravation. However, this is not possible for everyone. The only way to take the shortcut from the Sistine Chapel into St. Peter's Basilica is when you're on a guided tour, but not just any guided tour. The only tours that have access to that shortcut are outside tour companies. There are no tours of the Vatican Museums that you can book through the Vatican Museums themselves that take that shortcut into the Basilica. And not all tours that you can book with outside tour companies do take the shortcut into the Basilica. So when you're booking a tour of the Vatican Museums and you want to include that shortcut to the Basilica, check the description and make sure that it's included. I've seen quite a bit of talk online about this shortcut, and I know that many people think that it's possible to just sort of sneak in to the shortcut, maybe tag along to the back end of a tour that's making their way through. But I am here to tell you that this is no longer possible. You know, we used to do this quite a while ago, but things have changed. And I recently did a tour like this because I wanted to see what it was like. And I'm telling you that they're really strict about this. They stop the guide. They say how many people are on your tour. They just let that one tour go through. They count the people, they check that you're wearing the little sticker that says that you're on that tour, and then they let the next tour go in. So sneaking in is just not an option. So really the only way to take that shortcut is to book a tour with an outside tour company. And this is another thing I get asked quite often. Why don't the Vatican Museums offer a tour that includes the shortcut? The Vatican Museums is a completely separate entity from St. Peter's Basilica. Yes, they are next door to each other, and yes, they are connected, and they are both inside of Vatican City, but they're not related to each other. They're two completely separate sites. So the Vatican Museums sells tours and tickets for the Vatican Museums and the Vatican Museums alone. They don't have access to St. Peter's Basilica or the shortcut that connects them. But outside tour companies are not restricted this way, so they combine tours of the Vatican Museums with a tour of a second site, which is St. Peter's Basilica, and they've been able to make a deal that allows them to use that shortcut in between the two. So now you know the difference between going on your own and going with a tour. If you go on your own, you can set your own pace, and of course, it is the least expensive option. A tour offers you something different. Somebody to point out the most important pieces, to give you the history, the stories behind the art, somebody to set the pace for you. And if you want to take that shortcut into St. Peter's Basilica, then you can do that by taking a tour. There are many options for taking tours of the Vatican Museums, including the tours you can book through the Vatican Museums themselves. And I've done lots of videos about these kinds of tours, so I'm not going to get into those details in this video. In this video, I want to share with you how to get your tickets to visit the Vatican Museums or how to book a tour if that's what you want to do. So let's start with how to get entry tickets to the Vatican Museums. For me, there is only one way to do this, and that is to book them in advance online. Yes, you can purchase same-day tickets at the Vatican Museums if you show up and you stand in that line. Most of the times, the line is pretty long, and you risk standing in that line for more than an hour, if not several hours. If you do want to purchase same-day tickets to the Vatican Museums on site, you can try coming down first thing in the morning. The museums open at 8 a.m., so you could come down and get in the line at, say, 7 a.m., but that still means standing around in line for at least an hour and waiting for them to open when you could just buy them online. Another trick you can try that's worked for me in the past to purchase same-day tickets to the Vatican Museums on site is to go down there towards the end of the day, right before they close the ticket office. And sometimes you'll find that there is no line at that point, but because Rome has been so crowded lately and the Vatican Museums have been so crowded lately, I wouldn't risk that. I don't think I can guarantee that that's a good option anymore. I would also discourage you from purchasing tickets from some sort of street vendors because you just don't know if these are legit. Also, if you do purchase these tickets, sometimes they're actually a tour and you have to wait around. It can be a little complicated. So I would also avoid purchasing tickets on site this way. The Vatican Museum's website is supposed to sell tickets 60 days in advance. However, I'm making this video for you in 2024, and for some reason, now in the summer, they have released all of the tickets for the year through the end of the year. To purchase Vatican Museums tickets online, the two ways are through the Vatican Museums website and through a reseller. And it seems that they keep releasing them. So if you're looking for tickets right now for, let's say, November, and you don't see availability for the date and time you want, I suggest to keep checking back because, as I said, they keep on adding availability onto their site. However, they are still only selling tour tickets up to 60 days in advance. The entry tickets that you can find on the Vatican Museum's website do sell out, and so you may find that you're looking for a date, they don't have any availability, or they don't have availability for the time that you want. You can keep checking back, but you can also consider purchasing tickets through a reseller. And yes, of course, it costs more to purchase tickets through a reseller because they have to make their profit. So if you do not want to spend more for your Vatican Museums tickets and you can't find them on the Vatican Museums website, then the only option is to go down there and stand in the line and buy tickets for the same day. And of course, you could decide to book a tour. The least expensive option for booking a tour of the Vatican Museums is to book through the Vatican Museums website. Actually, I should probably say that the least expensive option for a tour of the Vatican Museums is to simply use their audio guide, but I am referring to, of course, having an actual guide. If you decide to book a tour of the Vatican Museums through a third party because you want to include the Basilica, or perhaps because there's some other feature of the tour that you want, then you have a world of choice. Unless you know the specific tour company that you want to book with, then I would recommend using an umbrella site like Get Your Guide or Viator because they show you all of the tour options for a given city, for a given tour that are offered by the local tour companies. So you can compare them. You can see who's available, who has a better option for going with kids, let's say, or a better price. I do work with and recommend certain tour companies, and I've linked to some of their tours in the description below. So now we come back to the question of which you should visit first, St. Peter's Basilica or the Vatican Museums. In my opinion, one of the best ways that you can visit Vatican City, especially if it's your first time here, is to book a tour of the Vatican Museums that also includes St. Peter's Basilica and includes the shortcut to the Basilica. Once you're inside the Basilica, you can then decide if you have time and energy to climb the dome. Then, when you're finished with St. Peter's Basilica, you'll leave through St. Peter's Square and you really will have seen most of what there is to see in Vatican City. What if you decide to visit the Vatican Museums later in the day, or you have a tour of the Vatican Museums later in the day that doesn't include the Basilica? Can you visit the Basilica before the museums? Yes, of course, you can absolutely visit St. Peter's Basilica before you visit the Vatican Museums. You should know there is no way to get from St. Peter's Basilica into the Vatican Museums. So if you visit the Basilica first, the only way to get to the Vatican Museums is to leave the Basilica, cross St. Peter's Square, go all the way around the Vatican walls to the entrance of the Vatican Museums. And this can take somewhere between 15 and 30 minutes, depending on how you walk. One of the things that I highly recommend is visiting St. Peter's Basilica when they open at 7 a.m. Usually there's almost nobody in line, although lately I can't guarantee that, but if there are lines, they will be short. And usually there are very few people inside the Basilica at that hour. Also, the light is really beautiful. One thing about visiting the Basilica at this hour, the dome opens at 7:30. So if you want to climb the dome, that's a great time to go because hopefully it will be pretty uncrowded. But you should know that the sun will be right in your face because the Basilica faces east. So I think that the best time to climb the dome is actually in the afternoon because the sun is behind you. But if you're not planning to climb the dome, then there's no issue. Or if you still want to go up and climb the dome at that time, obviously it's not a problem. Just expect your photos to be a little bit washed out. People often ask me if it's possible to visit St. Peter's Basilica at 7 a.m. and make it to the Vatican Museums for an 8 a.m. or even 8:30 a.m. entry ticket or tour. And the answer is no. Just the logistics of standing in line to go through security of St. Peter's Basilica, then heading inside, walking around the church, checking it out. Let's say you only spend 20 minutes in there. You still have to get back out, across St. Peter's Square, and then all the way around the walls to get to the entrance of the Vatican Museums. And if you have a tour that's starting at 8:30 or even 9 o'clock, you are just going to be cutting it very close, and you might not even make it. And lately, I've seen quite a lot of people saying that they plan to visit St. Peter's Basilica at 7 a.m. one morning, climb the dome, etc., and then do their Vatican Museums visit on a separate day. If you have enough time in your visit to separate out these two sites, then I would highly recommend it because both sites, St. Peter's Basilica and the Vatican Museums, are big sites on their own, and combining them in one visit is pretty tiring. But as I've mentioned several times in this video, of course it's doable, and I even recommend visiting the Vatican Museums and the Sistine Chapel and St. Peter's Basilica and St. Peter's Square all on the same day. In fact, you can include a climb to the dome. Just remember this is going to be a very intense and busy day, and allow for logistics, allow for some downtime, perhaps some snack time in between these sites if you can. And in just a moment, I'm going to give you a few more options for ways to organize your visit to Vatican City when you want to see more than just the Vatican Museums and St. Peter's Basilica. At the beginning of this video, yes, I did say that there are really three main things to see at the Vatican, and that is St. Peter's Square, St. Peter's Basilica, and the Vatican Museums where the Sistine Chapel is. But there really are a few more things that you can see and do in Vatican City. Although you can book these on the Vatican Museums website, and they are sort of considered part of the Vatican Museums, the Vatican Gardens is a separate site you can visit in Vatican City. You can either book a walking tour of the Vatican Gardens or a bus tour. Either way, your tickets to the Vatican Gardens include entry into the Vatican Museums. I've done a video for you about this. You can check that out if you want to see what it's like. You could also visit the Vatican Necropolis at the Via Triumphalis, which is not the same as St. Peter's tomb. The Vatican Necropolis at the Via Triumphalis is unrelated to St. Peter's Basilica or the Vatican Museums, and it's a visit by itself. You don't wind up anywhere else before or after this visit. You can book a visit to the Via Triumphalis directly on the Vatican Museum's website. I have a whole video about this if you want to learn more. Another thing you can do when you visit Vatican City is see the Pope. There are three ways you can see the Pope in Vatican City. On Sundays, when the Pope is in town, he gives the Angelus or Angelus in Vatican Square. The Angelus is a 15-minute greeting and devotional prayer. It's free and open to everyone, and you don't need a ticket to attend. The Angelus begins at noon sharp and lasts for exactly 15 minutes. I would suggest you get down there for about 10:30 so that you can get through security and get into St. Peter's Square and find your place while you wait for the Pope to appear in the window above. By the way, there's a secret bonus for attending the Angelus. When you go through the security lines to get into St. Peter's Square, you're already in. And at the end of the Angelus, or actually even during it, you can go right into St. Peter's Basilica without going through any more security lines. On Wednesdays, when the Pope is in town, he holds the papal audience, usually in St. Peter's Square. I say usually because in inclement weather, he may hold the audience in the Pope Paul VI auditorium. The papal audience starts at around 9:30 and lasts for around 2 hours. However, if you do plan to attend the papal audience, I suggest you get down there at around 7:30 to get a good seat. And by good seat, I mean either in the front or on the sides, because after the audience, the Pope rides around through the crowd, and if you're sitting on the side, you'll be very close to him when he passes by. The papal audience is also free to attend, but you do need a ticket. I'll explain how to get tickets in just a minute because it's the same process for getting tickets to the third way to see the Pope, which is to attend a papal mass. A papal mass is just what it sounds like. It's a liturgical celebration in which the Pope presides. You can attend many masses inside St. Peter's Basilica and the other papal basilicas in Rome, but if you want to see the Pope preside over a mass, you need to request tickets. As I said, it's free to attend a papal audience. It's also free to attend a papal mass. In the description below, I'm linking to the page on the RomeWise website where you can see the procedure for requesting your free tickets to a papal mass or a papal audience. If you want to see the Pope's schedule to make sure that he will be in town when you're here, just visit vatican.va and click the calendar. Probably the two most popular papal masses include the Mass for Easter Sunday and the Mass for Christmas Eve. If you want to attend one of those masses, or really any papal mass, you should request tickets as long in advance as possible. And just to be clear, because I've been asked about this, the Pope does not give an audience to one or just a few people. The papal audience is for everyone, and the crowds are pretty big, which is why the papal audience is usually in St. Peter's Square. It's important to note that when the Pope is giving the papal audience, whether to the crowd in St. Peter's Square or to the crowd that's in the Pope Paul VI audience hall, or during a papal mass, whether it's in St. Peter's Square or inside the Basilica, St. Peter's Basilica is closed to visitors. This is especially important for those of you looking to take the shortcut from the Sistine Chapel to St. Peter's Basilica. On Wednesday mornings, if you book that kind of a tour, they will provide you with an alternate thing to see, which is usually the Pinacoteca, the paintings gallery. But you should know this in advance to avoid any disappointment. I've already explained how to combine a visit to the Vatican Museums and the Sistine Chapel with a visit to St. Peter's Basilica, whether you visit the Basilica first and the museums after, or vice versa. But people often ask me how to combine a normal visit to the Vatican, visiting the museums and the Basilica, with more visits, such as attending the papal audience, or visiting the Vatican Gardens, or visiting St. Peter's tomb. So these are my best tips for combining your Vatican visits so you can maximize your time with the least stress. The three things I just mentioned, attending a papal audience, visiting St. Peter's tomb, visiting the Vatican Gardens, are all offered on specific dates and times. For example, if you want to attend the papal audience, it's only held on Wednesday mornings when the Pope is in town. So if you want to attend the papal audience and visit other sites in Vatican City on the same day, the first thing you have to do, of course, is to get your tickets to the papal audience. If you just want to visit St. Peter's Basilica after the papal audience, it's pretty easy. You just get up when the audience is over, you head into the Basilica, and you visit it. And then, of course, if you want, you can also climb the dome. Remember, the Basilica is closed during the papal audience and it reopens after the papal audience is finished. It might be, 15 or 20 minutes after it's over. So you might have a small wait if you plan to go inside of the Basilica right after the audience. But where the papal audience is concerned, I find that what most people ask me is how easy it is to visit the Vatican Museums after the audience. This is absolutely doable, of course. Just remember, this is going to be a pretty long day. My suggestion would be to book your Vatican Museums ticket or tour for no earlier than 2 p.m. This will allow you more than enough time to get over to the museums, but also to have a break in between and probably something to eat. If, after the papal audience, you want to book a tour of the Vatican Museums that includes the shortcut into St. Peter's Basilica at the end, then of course you can do it that way. But if you are not booking this tour or you just want to go in on your own, then after the audience is over, you could visit the Basilica and then head over to the museums for your visit. And in that case, I would book the museums visit for no earlier than 3 p.m. As for the Vatican Gardens, there are more options for dates and times, so I would suggest you look for the time that suits you best and where you can find availability. This tour usually lasts about an hour and a half to 2 hours, depending on whether you go with a bus or a walking tour. Just remember that at the end of this tour, you will be allowed entrance into the Vatican Museums. I'm often asked if it's possible to leave the Vatican Gardens at the end of your tour, go outside, have some lunch, and then come back into the museums on that same ticket. And the answer is no, it's not possible. At the end of your Vatican Gardens visit, your tour guide will take you into the Vatican Museums directly from the gardens. Most of the time, the tickets to the Vatican Gardens include a guided tour of the gardens, again, whether via bus or on a walking tour, but they don't include a guided tour of the museums themselves. But there is an option, and if you can find it, I do suggest it, that includes not just a tour of the Vatican Gardens, but also a guided tour of the Vatican Museums with one of the Vatican Museums staff. Either way, there is no outside tour company that offers tours of the Vatican Gardens and could combine them with a visit to St. Peter's Basilica and the shortcut there. So if you want to visit the Vatican Gardens, but you also want to visit St. Peter's Basilica, you're going to have to do that on your own. Most Vatican Gardens tours are held in the early or mid-morning, so you could either visit St. Peter's Basilica first thing in the morning when they open at 7, or you could head over there after you leave the Vatican Museums. As for St. Peter's Tomb, this is very restricted, so you're going to write them and ask for availability during the time you'll be in Rome. They're going to write you back and say, we can fit you in on this tour on this date at this time. Remember that at the end of your visit to St. Peter's Tomb, you will wind up inside of St. Peter's Basilica. And that is one of the benefits of visiting St. Peter's Tomb. And of course, while you're there, as I've mentioned, you could decide to climb the dome if you like. But of course, most people want to know how they can visit St. Peter's Tomb and the Basilica and also visit the Vatican Museums. This will really depend on what time you are allotted for your tour of St. Peter's Tomb. A visit to St. Peter's Tomb is about an hour and a half to 2 hours. Add the Basilica, possible dome climb, and then you're going to want to give yourself a break, probably time to eat something and time to make your way over to the Vatican Museum. So if you have a visit to St. Peter's Tomb in the morning, I would book your museum's visit for sometime around 2 or later. On the other hand, they often do these visits later in the day. So if you have a visit to St. Peter's Tomb for around, let's say, 2 o'clock, remember that you'll be able to visit St. Peter's Basilica afterwards. Then you can plan your Vatican Museums visit for the morning. And I would suggest going as early as you can to, again, give yourself that break in between these sites so you can rest and have a bite. And people have asked me how to do all of these things together. For example, how to visit St. Peter's Tomb and attend the papal audience and visit the Vatican Gardens, etc. Once we get to this level, you're going to need more days. Some basic rules of thumb: plan for more time than you think. Plan for a lot more energy than you think. Wear super comfortable shoes. Build in some downtime, and consider that visiting the Vatican Museums and St. Peter's Basilica and St. Peter's Square is easily a half day, but it's like taking up a whole day where your energy is concerned. And once you start adding more sites or more visits, you're going to start turning your visit or your day into something really intense, time-consuming, and exhausting. So I would consider pacing yourself as best you can, taking more days if you have them. And if you have to fit them all into one day, then do the things that require a specific time, book those first, and then book everything else around those. All right, guys, I have tried to answer as many questions as I can, as I know people have asked me over the years in the RomeWise Facebook group, through email, through messages. Are there any questions that I didn't answer? Please leave them in the comments below. I would love to hear from you, and I'll be glad to answer them. And if you'd like a little bit more background on Vatican City, you can grab my ebook, A Brief History of Vatican City. It's linked in the description below. And to catch up on all my Vatican videos, don't miss my Vatican playlist right here.